These are 20 by 10s. So the way that we talk about slate is we talk about it the height first, which is 20 inches. You can see from there to there is 20 inches by 10, and these are 10 inches wide. And so you'll see also bigger slate here, and they're 20 by 12, which means again they're 20 inches high, but these are 12, and they're for our starters. We need to make them a little bit higher because we want to have the head lap, which I'll show you later, to be the right size. And then there's a special bevel to these slate. You can see one side has this kind of a bevel, and the other side is straight. So when we do the starters, we put the bevel down so that when you look up, you can see it. And then we put our slate on top with the bevel going on the other side. So I'll show you all that. Some of the other stuff we're going to be doing. Obviously, we're using copper hand nails. We use 2 inches at the bottom because we have the starters. We do about 1.5 inches in the middle of the roof. On this job, we're using some ice shield and 30-pound felt. We're replacing some of the plywood. We're doing some copper flashings, step flashings, chimney flashings, and ridge cap, custom bent ridge cap on here. So we got about 8 square. So we got these 2 pallets over here. First step is to take this down. We had a tree. This tree was here, fell onto the house, and damaged the gutters, smashed some fascia, broke a couple rafter tails, busted the dormer up where they see that stuff. This is all temporary patching stuff. But here's the other the pallets that we'll be using. I don't think we'll use all of this. There'll be some extra, but there it is. Okay, so this is the starter, and you can see the bevel here on one side. So just imagine you're underneath the roof, and this is the edge of the roof right here. What we do is take this slate and we flip it upside down so that when you look up, you see this bevel. So then that sits there, and then you take another piece of slate and you put it on top, and you split the difference. The first slate will go 5 inches over here, then the next one will go 10 inches, then 5 inches. So we split the seam so that a piece of slate is 5 inches on this side, 5 inches on this side. And so this gets staggered in order to make sure and maintain a 5-inch offset on this side and this side of the slate that goes on top. And when we put that slate on top, so this is the actual slate that we'll use. We put that slate on top like this, so you can see the offset. So it'll be 5 and 5. Then the next one sits there. The next one sits there. The next one sits there. But the bevel this time is up because we want to see that bevel because it looks great, and we want to see it from underneath with the starter. So we flip this upside down. So when we nail these, you can see where we're nailing. And you can see we'll put nails in here, and we'll pop a nail in over here to hold the starter. Offset this, like we talked about, all the way across the roof, and nail these guys up in here. And then this gives, the reason we use this 12-inch is it gives us a 2-inch overlap here. If we didn't, the water would rush in here if we didn't have a bigger 12-inch width on this. So these are 12 by 20s. We'll run them across the roof, offset these, and then just keep running the roof up. So the rule is with exposure is you take half the slate's height, considering a 3-inch overlap. So you take 20 minus 3, you get 17. You divide it by 2, you get 8.5. So the exposure on here is 8.5 inches, and the exposure is this. The distance between the bottom of the slate and the next slate. So right there is where our exposure would be, and that gives us a 3-inch overlap. So you can see this piece here down 3 inches right there, runs across, and you see you have a 3-inch overlap, at 8.5 inches exposure. And that's how you set up these roofs. So the rule is you just take half the slate minus, you take the slate minus 3 inches overlap divided by 2, and that gives you your setup for your exposure lines on any slate roof. Okay, so here's how you set the offset. The offset is easy. If this is 10 inches, which it is, you divide it in half, and so your offset is 5 inches and 5 inches. And then you can see we have an 8.5-inch exposure, which gives us a 3-inch, see where that mark is? A 3-inch head lap. You nail there. You nail there. This one goes on top, and they run that way offset all the way across the roof and all the way up. And what we'll do is we'll strike a line down at the bottom of the roof, and then measure 5 inches over, strike a line, snap it all the way up the roof, snap this one all the way up the roof, and just start and work our way. And typically we'll start on the edge, we'll pre-cut, and when we cut, I'll show you, we flip these upside down, we make our marks, and we cut it. That way it gives us the bevel back when we cut it, and then that one will fit in here. So we'll start here, put a full one, start a small one, full one, small one, full one, all the way up. All right, so like I said, the slate has 2 different sides, right? One has this chamfered edge, and one has this straight edge that doesn't have, it's just solid across. So these are 10 inches wide, as you can see. And what we want to do is cut these in half, so our offset is 5 inches. So we'll mark 5 inches, and we cut them. So I'll show you what that looks like. So with slate, it's easy to just make a scratch line or scribe line. So I just use the end of my painter's tool, multi-painter's tool, or usually I'll use a slater's hammer, which I don't have with me. And then what I do is line this up, and we strike a line. You can't do this with one hand. You can see that line. And then this is the cutter. So it's got these little, I guess, extension tables here, and then this is what cuts it. So you stick it in there and cut along that line. So now you see the line still has that chamfered edge on both sides. The back side looks like that. Now, when you hang these 5-inch pieces, there's only one nail hole. So what I do is I punch another nail hole. This is already set up to have a little punch here. Let me get rid of this thing. Get off of there. So we just stick it in upside down again, because we want the nail hole to look like that on the back, but we actually want it to have like an indent here, so that when the nail sits in there, let me show you the nail. So when the nail sits in there, it can sit inside of that and not be proud of like sitting flush, because if it sits flush, it can push through over time, you know, we're talking years, it can push through the piece of slate that's on top of it and create a hole that comes through the top of the slate, which you don't want. So we flip these upside down, hit it really hard, and pop a hole in it. Ah, and I broke it. Let me show you a different one. Sometimes that happens, especially when I'm trying to hold this and do this camera. Hey, there it is. See how it looks like on the back? How it looks on the front? Looks like the other one. So some people do drills and then over time this nail head will pop through the top piece of slate if you use a drill. We want that slate to blow out on the front, you know. So we want this, all this slate around here to blow out this way. So that's why you flip it upside down. If I did it the other way, it'll blow out the other side. We just want a spot where that nail can sit in there. And the other thing about slate is we're hanging it. We're not nailing it hard against the wood. So on this very first piece, because this house has some pitching of the flying gable in the front, or the flying gables, and a combination of the eave overhang, it's not totally straight. So it has this curve to it. So this first piece that we put on, I don't know if you can see it, it's that 5-inch piece. That piece is elevated about 1.5 inches off the roof at the top and flat at the bottom. And that's okay. We just don't nail the nail all the way tight. Otherwise, it would push that piece of slate up at the bottom the distance that it has to hang at the top. I wanted to explain why we're dropping this exposure from here to here. We wanted it to be 8.5, but over here it's not going to be 8.5 because we want to make sure we maintain this headlap here. If we didn't have this headlap and we were up here, it would leak in here. So I want to show you what we did. We ran a chalk line all the way across, and our high point is right in the middle here. So all we did was maintain a 3-inch headlap here with this starter. And over on the other side, it's about 4 inches. Over here, it's about 4.5 inches. And then what we'll do is we'll run this second row or second course across, and then we're straight, and we can then run everything based on that 8.5 exposure all the way up the roof. And you can see that this row is smaller. This row is smaller than that row, and then these rows are all 8.5 inch exposure. Oh, and what I want to explain is that we're hanging this. We're not driving it home. See how they move? We're hanging slate. We don't nail it tight, especially when there's a starter here. The other ones can get a little bit tighter. They won't have this much movement. And the reason we're leaving these out is because we're going to be adding special hangers in here. So we're going to skip wherever we want to put these hangers. And these are really strong hangers that are steel, so we can place them 3 feet apart. So we're going to be putting one there, and we're going to skip over this, and then we're going to come and put those hangers in, and then add that piece of slate after the hangers are installed. We don't typically like to do that, but the hanger, we had to make a change with the hangers that we're using because the fascia is so small. And the customer said that the old hangers were just bending as soon as it snowed, or some, leaves and stuff got in his half-round gutter that goes under here. And so we wanted to beef them up. So unfortunately, this is our workaround until we get them next week and put them in. So what we'll do is we'll actually, wherever these rafters are, because we have exposed tongue and groove ceiling, see where these rafters are? These rafter tails, we're going to cut out and put that hanger and run it through, and then pop these slate in. So because these snow guards are super big and thick, we had to recess and cut out the slate in this section. It goes all the way up into here. The reason is, if we didn't, then when the snow hits here, it would crack the slate over time. It would be easier for it to crack the slate over time. So we notched it out and set that inside of that notch, and then nailed that in so that it would be flush here, so we wouldn't have extra pressure on this slate so it doesn't break.